Welcome to SWP Ireland TV. This week we're looking at the Turkish uprising, the scandal of private creches and the new book on revolution. Hi, I'm talking to Mehmet Uludağ, who's a Turkish socialist. Mehmet, why are these protests taking place in Turkey?
7 days ago, this day last week, the government had moved in to destroy a public park in the city center of Istanbul, the Taksim Square, the Gezi Park, and a number of groups had occupied the park in protest against the destruction of the park and building a shopping center, yet another shopping center in Istanbul. And they were very peaceful environmentalist protesters, students, people from different groups. And then there was a very heavy-handed attack by the police to the protesters, and tents were burned, and people were beaten, people were arrested. And since then, of course, there has been a build-up in the country against the government policies about anti-democratic laws, about the political arrogance of the establishment and the state, and various groups with their own demands, but with the sort of common bottom line argument of more democracy, more freedom, more equality, and of course more human rights, and indeed more economic rights, have been put onto the agenda, and thousands of people have decided to support the protest and are on the streets.
Okay, great. And has there been a background of protests in Turkey in the last few years, or what is the situation there?
There has always been protests. There have always been protests in Turkey, big, small protests, localized protests, general protests, such as the May Day protests in Turkey are very big. But a protest at this level, a protest in this nature hasn't been seen in Turkey for a long, long time. Now, one has to also put this into context. Turkey at the moment is being labeled as a country which is not affected by the sort of the financial crisis around the world. The Prime Minister is proud of running a country with the second fastest growing economy. Seemingly there's an increased wealth in Turkey, but increased unemployment, increased poverty levels. There has been tension building up in Turkey, and people have felt the anger, people have felt the frustration.
Okay, and what has been the response of the state?
Okay, the response of the state was initially dismissive. Well, they attacked the initial protesters on the park, the occupiers on the park, horribly and brutally so. They terrorized people, they have beaten up people. But since then, as the numbers grew, as the protesters grew, as many different organizations, anyone from gay, lesbian association to trade union members, to students' unions, to workers, to industrial engineers, to computer engineers, as they joined in, the response of the state has become harsher and harsher. Very heavy-handed and very brutal. They have terrorized the streets, they have terrorized the people, and the amount of tear gas used on the streets of Istanbul may have at this stage surpassed what has been used in Tahrir at times. But the state is not taking this very lightly, and the state is trying to do anything it can do in terms of scaring people away. But people don't seem to have been scared, and people's numbers have only been increased since then.
And what's happening now, and what are the developments?
Right. Yes, what's happening now? Interesting things are happening in Turkey. Yet again, a lot of people may say it's not expected, it was spontaneous, but I think it was quite expected. It's just the timing of it wasn't probably calculated or expected by many of the people. For example, a great news today was that the trade union, the Congress of Public Sector Workers, has declared a 2-day general strike starting on Wednesday. The occupiers of the park and the protesters in Taksim Square have declared a 4-point demands from the government. And they are very specific demands. And they say until such demands are met, they will not even consider stopping the protest. A lot of other workplaces have actually shown signs of supporting the strike. And an interesting example is today in a shopping center in Istanbul, workers of the shops have come out in their hundreds and protested against demolishment of the park to build a new shopping center. We see on the streets a lot of different political groups. We see on the streets anyone from the nationalists to the revolutionary socialists to gay and lesbians to Muslims indeed. For example, the anti-capitalist Muslims are on the streets. And interesting enough, for the first time, one Muslim woman said, she said, for the first time in my life, not only I have taken a glass of water from a gay man, but I also have said hello to this man. So these were the people that the establishment thought will never talk to each other, will rule them separately and differently and oppress them in their own different ways. But these people seem to be out on the street in more and more increased numbers, in more radicalized and politicized sense, and more hopeful than ever.
Hi, today I'm talking to Leah Spate, who's a single mother and activist in a single parents campaign, and she's also a member of the Socialist Workers' Party. So what was your initial response to the programme?
I suppose the initial response of the single mothers that are involved in the Spark campaign was the same response as opposed to any mother or parent, father who watched the RTE, absolutely horrified that this was the quality of care being provided in this country for our children. Obviously in Spark one of our key arguments has been over the past year that for affordable childcare, but we also want childcare of equality. We want to know when you drop your children off, they are being cared for. And I suppose this is one of the arguments that we've always had in Spark, that obviously besides the fact that the private companies are too expensive, also that you have good quality, and we believe that only the state can provide through proper investment, good quality childcare. I think that's what it boils back down to. I mean, no matter what age you are, whether you're a baby or maybe when you're elderly in life, at some point everyone in society will need care. Do you know what I mean? You will need a carer, be that your mother, childcare, or when you're elderly. And I suppose it's the view in society, how do we value the people that care for our loved ones? And I suppose if you've got a situation where, as we've seen what's happened recently, you're cutting the care allowance, the work for the care allowance workers, you're cutting the different grants and everything, you're not providing childcare, you're not investing in state childcare, you're not investing in even the qualifications for people to be childcare. So if we've got a state that doesn't value that in society, this is going to be a result. We've seen it with some of the scandals from elderly people. So it's no shock then when you see that this is also happening on the children, at the end of when it's children as well.
Yeah, and then just in terms of, some people would say that because the profit motive actually makes things more efficient.
Well, it goes back to what I was speaking about first. I mean, society has a responsibility, the state has a responsibility for the care of the people in the society. So, if it goes into a private company, their main aim and their main game is for profit. Do you know what I mean? It's not to provide the service. So that goes back to the whole argument of privatisation, regardless of what it is, particularly when it needs to be. It's a service that people are entitled to and should have in the society. And I mean, it's just horrific when you look at JobsBridge is offering these workers, and it's been said that these workers only earn between 14,000 and 21,000 euros a year. So it's not a high-paid job. They're overworked, and then they're being undermined when you see the government, who should be investing and providing for care, are helping boost up the private companies by a JobsBridge. I mean, it is a stressful job. I mean, if you're undermining the workers and you're undermining the whole way we look at care, this is what we're going to get. What we've seen in prime time, I think, is going to be the tip of the iceberg of what's going on in this country.
I'm here with James O'Toole, who's just written a new book called Revolution, A Beginner's Guide, which is out on Thursday. So, James, why did you write this book?
People learn through struggle. I mean, revolution is a process where millions of people, battle state forces, test their union leaders, and it's in the course of struggle that people really learn lessons. We're not the first generation to face these questions. So, when the people on the protests in Turkey, when the men with batons come along, people from 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, people from the past might have something to say to us about how those state forces are going to react to a mass uprising, how your union leaders react to a mass uprising.
Okay, so tell me, what are the main themes of the book?
Well, one of the main themes is that revolution is really the entry of the masses of people onto the stage of history, because usually we're taught, that it's the G8 or it's the world leaders, it's kings, it's queens, it's these great individuals that make history. Whereas in actual fact, the key turning points in history, like the French Revolution of 1789, the wave of revolutions that followed World War I, that they involve millions of people entering onto the stage of history.